What's up, YouTube? This is your boy John from the Jersey Shore, and I am back with you today to give you my review of the 1990 film Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre III. This one's for you, Tommy Click. Leatherface was written by David J. Scow and it was directed by Jeff Burr. Starring Kate Hodge, Ken Foree, Viggo Mortensen, and R.A. Mihailoff as Leatherface.
Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre III.
So our story begins with Michelle and Ryan driving through the dusty roads of Texas. They're driving along and they come up to a traffic stop. The police have stopped traffic because they've uncovered a mass grave out in the middle of nowhere. They've been finding what they believe could be hundreds of bodies, and what they're doing is they're just simply stopping people and asking them questions as they're driving along. The cop that talks to Michelle and Ryan basically tell them, go ahead, well, they ask him, where are you going? She says, I'm just delivering this car to Florida for my dad. We're driving from LA to Florida. The cop says, all right, move along, keep driving, and no matter what, do not stop, just keep on going. So along the way, they stop to fuel up and hit the restroom. This is where they meet someone by the name of Alfredo, who's played by Tom Everett. He's a real fidgety character. And they also meet a reasonably normal character named Tex, who was portrayed by Viggo Mortensen. Michelle goes in to use the restroom at one point, and that leaves Tex outside with Ryan. They are looking at a map together. Tex is trying to convince Ryan to take him along for a ride to get him where he's going. Ryan is telling him, no, we cannot help you. I'm sorry, but we can't help you. And in the midst of all this, Tex is showing Ryan an alternate route on the map. Ryan says, that looks like it's about the same distance. I don't understand why are you telling me to take this route? Looks like it's going to take the same amount of time. I don't want to take that route. So while Michelle is in the bathroom, you see that Alfredo is a peeping Tom. He pulls back a little picture on the wall and he's watching Michelle while she's in the bathroom.
I'm going to service you real good, ma'am.
So while this is taking place, you hear a little bit of a commotion and Tex goes in and he actually grabs a hold of Alfredo and yanks him out. Everybody's back outside at this point, and Tex tells Michelle, it looks like you had a peeping Tom, or it looks like we have a peeping Tom and you were the main attraction. She says, oh, gross, whatever. She gets back in the car. Ryan's getting ready to get back in the car. Alfredo runs back outside with a shotgun, and as Michelle and Ryan are pulling away, it appears that Alfredo has shot Tex. So at this point, Michelle is just pedal to the metal. Ryan's in the back seat. They're driving down the road like a bat out of hell. She's flying down the street. She's putting a pretty significant amount of distance, as much as she can, between that gas station and themselves. So she's driving along, and the camera breaks back to the gas station where you see a bay door open and a big truck with animal skin over the grill pull out of the gas station. Alfredo's firing his gun up in the air, and this truck takes off driving down the road. Eventually, Michelle and Ryan are both, Ryan's in the front seat now. They're driving down the highway. It is dark at this point, and they say, "Do you hear that? I hear something. Do you hear that?" And they realize that what they hear is that truck that pulled out of the gas station is now right behind them. It doesn't have their lights on. He turns on the lights. He's tailgating the hell out of them. He pulls around the passenger side, gets right next to him, and throws a dead animal on the hood of their car. It appears to be a wolf or a coyote. They pull off they skid to the side of the road, they flatten one of their tires, and that truck just keeps on going. Now they have a tire to change. In the dark, scared to death. So while these two are changing this tire and arguing back and forth, bitching and complaining, she's telling him he's got to hurry. He's telling her he's trying his best. They're trying to get the lug nuts off. They're trying to get the tire on. It's just a mess, and it's just a nonstop argument between these two at this point. Michelle says, again, do you hear that? I hear something. and they're shining the flashlight around. They don't see anything, but they hear squeaking sounds. Well, at least she does. And after a few more incidents of her saying, "Do you hear that?" and shining the flashlight around, out jumps Leatherface.
Did you hear that?
He starts swinging his chainsaw at them. They're having a fight between a chainsaw and a tire iron. They pull away. They manage to get back in the car. As they're pulling away, you can see they left the jack behind, and Leatherface has a hold of the trunk, and as they pull away, he pulls the trunk off. It's a pretty magnificent feat of strength. So now they're off again. She pedal to the metal again, flying down the road, bat out of hell again, and as they're driving down the road this time, now they're in the car arguing. "You gotta stop. I gotta tighten up the lug nuts." "I'm not stopping." She just says, "I ain't stopping. I gotta tighten up the lug nuts. We're gonna lose a tire." So as they're arguing and driving down the road, somebody steps out in front of the car. They swerve to avoid him, and they almost get into a head-on collision with an oncoming Jeep. Driving that Jeep is Benny. He's portrayed by the legendary horror actor Ken Foree. So their car goes flying off the side of the road. Ken Foree's Jeep flips over while Benny's Jeep flips over, and now they're both stuck. So Benny gets out of his Jeep, and he goes down to see if he can help Michelle and Ryan. He gets them out of the car. They're both pretty beat up, and then eventually Benny goes back up to his Jeep, and when he gets up there, there's already, strangely enough, a tow truck there with a guy lighting flares, saying that he is there to help Benny flip his Jeep back over.
Looks like you had a little mishap.
Something tells me he probably shouldn't trust this guy. This is a movie that I've always held pretty near and dear to my heart. It's very nostalgic for me. I remember when this movie first came out, way back in 91 or 90 or 91. It was released on the Starz network, which was known as Prism back then. I remember recording this on a VHS video cassette, and I watched this movie over and over and over. I absolutely loved this movie. I couldn't get enough of it. And now it's been a lot of years since I've watched this movie, and I was actually kind of surprised at how well I remembered this movie. I remembered just about every detail of this movie, which goes to show you how much I ingrained this and burned this into my memory bank. When most people think of the legendary Ken Foree and his career in horror movies, almost across the board, I have to assume that the older generation relates him to Dawn of the Dead, and the newer generation would relate him to the Rob Zombie movies. For me, Leatherface is the movie that I think of when I think of Ken Foree. I absolutely loved him in this movie. I consider him to be the star of this movie and not Kate Hodge. I think that the character Benny was the best character in this movie. As far as the actual movie itself goes, it's a good movie. I mean, it's a typical... I almost said it's an 80s horror movie. It actually came out in 90, but it definitely feels like an 80s horror movie. I don't think that this movie's great. I think that this movie's good. I think that it's just... There's really not a lot of story here. It's typical Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You got a guy with a chainsaw who's trying to kill people who are driving through Texas. I mean, it's not anything earth-shattering, groundbreaking, or different, but it's good. If you like slasher movies, this is a very good movie for you to watch. As far as the character Leatherface goes, I am a firm believer that Gunnar Hansen wrote the book on that, and I don't think that anybody has done it as good as he did since he did it in 1974. In part 3, this movie here, I think that the Leatherface character was leaps and bounds superior to the character in part 2, but I do not think that he was as good as the character in part 1. I thought he was cool. I thought he had a much better look than the part 2 Leatherface character, but when I hear Leatherface, I think of Gunnar Hansen. After I watched this movie yesterday, I actually sat down and I watched the little featurette after the movie on the DVD. I don't have this on Blu-ray. I have it on standard definition, but it actually did have a 28-minute featurette on it. And in there, they were talking about when this movie was originally made, it was given an X rating because of the violence and the gore in the movie. The special effects, the lead on the special effects in this movie was Greg Nicotero. So you know that was why you had a pretty good product in the end when it came to the special effects. Greg Nicotero is one of the most legendary special effects artists in the history of horror movies. So it's, you know, no surprise that the effects in this movie look pretty good. The practical effects, there were no CGI effects back then. The practical effects look great, and obviously it's because of Mr. Greg Nicotero. And in that featurette, he himself was talking about that they basically had to butcher this movie in order to get it into the movie theater with an R rating. In this movie, Leatherface, it's seeming to be the Leatherface has a very gigantic family. The first movie, you saw one set of a family. In the second movie, there was another set of a family. And in this movie, you have yet another family. The only character that's in this family that was in the first two families is Grandpa. Grandpa returned in this movie, but in this movie, Grandpa's dead. He's basically just a decoration sitting in the corner with blood running down his face. Alfredo was a very strange character. He fit right in with this family. He had one crazy eye, and he talked very strangely, and he was very fidgety, very much like the guy that they picked up hitchhiking in the original movie, and very much like Chop Top. You can see all three, Chop Top, the hitchhiker dude, and Alfredo. You can definitely see where these three people would all be related. This movie also introduced us to what I believe is supposed to be Leatherface's mother. She has no voice box, so she speaks through a little speaker that she holds up to her throat. She's very strange. She really does. She's pretty insignificant in this movie, but she's there, so I figured I'd mention her. And then there's also the character Tex, played by Viggo Mortensen. I didn't look him up on IMDb here, but I have to assume that this is one of the earliest movies that he ever did. And it's funny, I just recently watched The Green Book with him as a much older gentleman in a significantly different role, and it's almost impossible to believe that that's the same guy. Leatherface. I think it's good. I don't think it's great, but I think it's definitely worth the hour and a half that it takes to watch it. If you can find it, of course you can find it. In the world of Amazon, you can find everything. Give Leatherface a chance. Check it out. It's a pretty good movie. Alright folks, that's going to do it for my review of Leatherface, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 3. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you really like this video and you have been enjoying my content, please do me a huge personal favor. Click that subscribe button. After you click that subscribe button, remember to ring that notification bell. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Have a kick-ass day, and thank you for watching.